Alrighty. Well, Joe, it's as we were just saying, it's a long time coming. Um, I think you reached out when I was talking to Alex Hardy. So
Yeah.
episode 13, which was over a year ago. And yeah, he's been on his own path, his spiritual path, and
Man is on a journey.
he is, yeah. And so yeah, it's really cool to be able to speak to you and let this riff. I'm not sure where it's gonna go. But yeah, I reached it. We were talking before this, and um, speaking to what's top of mind for me is Christ and Christianity, which is really
Mhm.
cool.
Mhm.
I was not expecting to become involved with the religion and the faith. Still kind of tiptoeing my way because I it's a big shift,
Yeah.
to get into that. But I've been pretty public about, just because 'cause I've been doing the podcast, like, discussing about, trying to strengthen my character through a comprehensive, um, approach, which focuses on physical health, which can be, like, nutrition and,
Mhm.
the sauna and ice baths and strength training and, other modalities like somatic breath work, which can tap into like the nervous system regulation, but also kind of release a lot of emotions,
Yeah.
which has been really helpful for me. And then, yeah, over time, I was getting really curious as to um, how, yeah, just my spiritual development, and I was
Mhm.
seeing people around me, kind of in this specific Austin demographic, and seeing how people were in like a new age spirituality and all these different things. So, yeah, I've been on like my own journey with that. But before we get in, I just
Is
wanted
it kind
to,
of funny to get back to Christianity after, like, all
it
that
feels
stuff? It feels
odd.
like it's like the opposite of what your Christian grandma or, whatever version of stereotype that is,
Yeah.
prescribed. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I was baptized in the Catholic Church when I was a baby and then got my first communion, but then it fell off from there.
Mhm.
How about you? Were you also in that?
Yeah, I was, my household wasn't very religious, but I ended up going to a Catholic school from 2nd to, 4th grade, so for a couple years, but,
Okay.
and that was, like, a big time. I thought a lot about wanting to have the right answers, like, do things right,
In
do
second
things like,
grade?
yeah, oh, yeah, 2nd, 3rd grade, just be a good boy, those
Yeah.
things, and so I was like, "Oh, God, these things, like, this is it? These are the answers? Like,
Hmm.
cool, I'm gonna, like, feast I'm gonna be the best little Christian boy." Catholic it was a Catholic school too, so, uh, yeah, I actually went far, through the catechism. I was an altar boy for a couple years.
Okay.
I did my first communion. I was confirmed, and the teacher, the mentor I had working with me through that time, through the catechism, I'll never forget her. Her name's Annette. I'm, immensely grateful for how she handled this because I remember asking her, "So Nanette, there's Hindu people, there's Buddhist people, like, what happens to them when they die?"
Hmm.
And she took a pause, she was saying, "Well, they go where they believe they go when they die." And I was like, it blew my mind. I
That's
was
a
like, for a second, I was like, "Wait a minute," because that whole part of me that was like, "Hey, this is th I want the truth, I want the real thing, I want and that's,
yeah.
what I wanna get at." But then, the way at least when you put these religions, against each other or next to each other, you're like, "Well, it's one or the other." It's like, it feels like it's gotta be either or, and so, and I you know what, and I wouldn't have trusted her if she said, like, they go to hell or, like, something like that, or, like, that's
Mhm.
just, like, the I was at least between at 10 or 11 years old or whatever that was, at least wise enough to know, like, yeah, I don't know, or, like, I don't know if that's really how God works, man, or, like, just because you were born in India and, like, were Hindu all your life,
Mhm.
you are, now, live with Satan, like,
Yeah.
so, but it also spun me out of my Catholic journey because I was, well, I don't know that, that this isn't like sure then let me
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
figure something else out. I really like the term like pluralist or like pluralism,
Yeah.
which is sort of I did a audiobook course, one of the great courses over the last year on comparative religions, comparative theology, which talked about the big five like
Mhm.
of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and
Mhm.
Hinduism, and and just yeah, to come away from that, or like listening to that on a comparative sense of the commonalities and differences between those, and then some of the later lectures were just about the concept of pluralism, or people that like believe in all those, or believe they're all equally there. But then also a lot of people end up like they go through an arc of like they're like a pluralist, and then they pick one, and
Yeah.
it's like they settle into one because either I don't know, the community or the beliefs just harmonize the most for them or whatever it is. So I find that interesting, and it's kind of you have to find beliefs like your religion, but find it in a way that you get to hold it, but that you don't like require other people to hold
Yeah.
yours, or like that you like cast off others because they don't hold the same one. I think and there's some state to reach there, but that's
It's a delicate balance of, like,
yeah.
being able to, actually step into the faith, and it is, like, part of making that choice and that commitment is, like, okay, like, there's no, demonstrable way to prove that this is the real deal, but also there's no demonstrable way to prove it's not.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and for me, I've been on this journey, so um, I've put on X and through my podcast, like, I've done ayahuasca a few times, and that was, I think, probably one of the biggest events where I was able to kind of soak in that, okay, there's something bigger than me. And so
Hmm.
stepping away from that, um, there is like a new age, I think it was referred to as paganism back in the day. But now it's kind of like that's had like or maybe still has like a negative connotation to it. So new age spiritualities, um, I don't really know how to describe it. I don't know if you have a way to describe it, but for me, it seems like it's like kind of like a loose conglomeration of just pluralism in a way.
Yeah.
And um, I I wrestled with that for a little bit, and I'm still kind of new to this. So, but for me, just start like I follow my natural curiosity,
Right.
and Christ just is something I haven't paid attention to for most of my life. And I just started to kind of hang out with Christians, and I would just see, you can do that with like a Buddhist monk as well, and different people that are very dedicated to their faith and very devoted. But Christianity specifically has been in my family history, and so it just kind of already attracts that from a traditional or like cultural level.
Hmm.
Um,
Some early family programming, if you
yes,
will, kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm aware of that. So I'm not trying to just dive in because, oh, my family did it, But
Mhm. For some people, that's a reason not to do it, but
yeah, yeah. So I've been doing some research. So I had this kind of embodied experience where it was not rational really at all through plant medicine and other modalities and experiences, which really was just uh, it's ineffable. It's hard to put to words, but also um, to me, it's something that just felt like, yep, there's something beyond this physical world, and so as I've started to approach or continue life after those events, um, I'm actually writing about this too. I started to really look at, where are my beliefs? And Jordan Peterson talks about how people act out their beliefs. They might say them, but what they actually act out into the world is what they truly worship in a way. And you could be an
mhm.
atheist, and um, some people might disagree with this, but I've read this book called The Reason for God by Timothy Keller, which has been blowing my mind. That even if you're an atheist, it's still, in a way, it seems to be like a pretty major ideology, or you can have an ideology and there is some kind of faith in it as well. And you're not worshiping a god, but you might be worshiping and believing in something, right?
Yeah.
And dedicating your energy to that.
Yeah.
And so I was just looking at my life and I was like, yeah, I feel like I've been a materialist or a hedonist for most of my life.
Mhm.
And so for me to, you know, build myself forward in a manner that see that seems to be like aiming towards something noble, something that is gravitating towards the truth, capital T truth, which I don't. you know, that's a constant and current investigation. It seems like orienting my character, my identity, and aim towards God can provide a framework and way of being that can thus uh, formulate my who I am in all aspects of life.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've been discussing this because there's definitely been many moments in my life where I do fall prey to some of the what the Bible can refer to, some of the sins of like materialism and idolatry and all these different things. And so all that being said, I had no structure after these major events that I
Yeah.
participated in. And it was just kinda driving me crazy. I was like, my habits are not where they're getting better, but I don't feel like I have this structure, this community to really orient myself and progress in a manner that I would like to. And so, that's why I'm kind of aiming towards the Bible and what the Bible is saying. And funny, I'm reading everything but the Bible right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm, like, reading the New Testament, I'm starting, but I've been, like taking manual notes of Jordan Peterson's biblical studies lecture series on
Hmm.
YouTube,
Yeah.
not like plugging in the YouTube link into AI and having it all come out for you. Like I'm
Yeah.
actually like taking the time to look at it, and it's blowing my mind. His ability, his stream of consciousness during the lectures are just amazing,
Hmm.
and the lens of like evolutionary phenomenological, literary, um, psychological, all these different lens has been blowing my mind. So anyways, as human beings, we typically imitate other people, and like I see all these other people that I have been looking at for a long time, and I see their progress in their investigation journey as well,
Hmm.
and it seems to be working for them.
Hmm.
So I know I'm kind of all over the place, but essentially what I'm saying is, it seems that what I am trying to do is find a structure and a framework, and Christianity can provide that. Maybe the teachings of Christ in the Bible specifically, because I had a friend that said, be careful when you enter into this space, like to recognize the teachings of Jesus and Christianity separately. So
Mm.
what I think what he meant by that was like what Jesus said versus like Christianity and the social maybe dogma or cultural kind of like
Yeah. The
ways of
church.
yeah
Like, yeah.
yeah
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there.
yeah I know
Uh, yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, there's one piece is like your personal relationship with God and whoever that is, and that's a very interior space
hmm
that's um I think it is important because we all do need some kind of lodestone or sense of direction or like, I am good, I am loved, you know, I'm willing to take the next step and that's a faithful exercise. And a lot of people get drawn, I know for me, even, out of just challenges of like, it's the challenges of life that kind of drive people to religion and
hmm yeah
wanting something like this or wanting like, oh, like God, thing I thought would make me happy or that, once I solved that problem, I'd be feeling, but I'm not, so what's kind of an other that I can focus on?
uh-huh.
So I recognize that,
When
there,
what if you don't mind me
good.
asking, when did you recognize that? Was that very recently or was that a while ago?
I'd say, 2022 was a hard year for me in a lot of ways. I lost my dad to after a long journey with dementia. It was a wild time in crypto markets, a lot of
Yep.
capital markets and investor challenges. We had to downsize the team at Unchained by end of year. It was really really
Yeah.
rough. So in a lot of ways, yeah, coming out of that was kind of a bottom of like, oh man, what's going on? And I've and also I recognize friends or like there's friends of us know somebody who their company went through a really challenging time also around then. They actually had to wind their business down. And I remember interacting with them and they're another CEO and it's like, you know, they're they're plotting on, they're okay. They're responding to emails. And
Mhm.
then it's like, hey man, I asked later on and they go to mass every day. They've gone to mass every day for decades. And it was kind of just an interesting data point of like, oh, well, like that it's just like a practice, like going through the good times and the bad,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
like your way of you're just like checking in. Nope, I go to 7 a.m. mass or whatever it is. That that kind of a grounding. exercise. And for some, it might be just meditation. What is that ritual? What is that like place to find that interiority, like that expansiveness inside to that? So whatever's happening outside, well, like fits under
Mm,
that. Um, so yeah, for my on just like a timeline basis, it was kind of that going through that experience, writing a lot of things last year, and then a friend gifted me a Bible, and I just committed. I was like, oh, yeah, I've always wanted to read it.
mm,
So I've been this year. I've been doing a daily reading practice that I'm on track to just have read the whole thing by the end of the year.
cool.
And that Father Mike Schmitz, I think, Bible in a Year program. That plus some other things that have been fun to explore, like at the same time, because it has it as a work of either call it literature or like world religion or whatever or the Word of God. Actually, you on any of those dimensions, it's kind of pretty interesting book to read,
Mhm.
like get through. That was another point, just a way of I listened to a guy's lecture series, Mark Gaffney
Okay.
on it was the erotic and the holy. So it's kind of about the erotic, but his point is about like erotic doesn't have to mean sexual. It, like actually used to mean something more about like um expansive connection with the design, a real presence in a
Mhm.
way. But I like the point he made about like the Bible and that there's a way the Bible like it like has this like extra way it's like talked about or like waved around like culturally versus like being a book or like being a book of stories, being a book of a lot of great things. And like, I don't know, like there's this way like people in a control based mindset or in some other, you know, feeding their own demons or just, or out of their own ignorance, brandish the Bible or what the Bible says or these things. And it's, kind of when you read it, um, it's messy in there, man. It's a messy thing. The humankind is messy. That's, I think something you can say about it is that it does like feature almost all the things that happen for us in our lifetimes that do
Mm.
happen to people. There's probably an instance of it. There's something of it. It might happen there more times than just once. But so it really does cover like the range of human experience. And yeah, I think there's that divorcing of, and I think there's a way too, as I've read about this stuff that kind of and thought about it that like those kind of very base layer emotions, there's guilt or shame. I think those things those get kind of weaponized in like a religious context, but
Yeah.
they're also kind of the gateway to that stuff. It's sort of like, you know, like, "Here, God, take my shame," like, it's like kind of it's also like the kind of like escape hatch or like a way out of sort of your own stuckness as a person to just admit, surrender, like,
Uh, uh,
let you have this,
yeah, just
Mr.
to
Being, sir, or
just just to interject, yeah. I would say the former of that, the maybe inability to figure things out from a intellectual perspective. Like, there's certain things that people try to figure out, but they're attacking it from a problem-solving, cerebral, mechanism or way of thinking,
yeah.
and I think it's John Vervaeke, I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Great,
Mr. Meaning Crisis.
yes. He had a quote, I'm probably gonna butcher it, I'll paraphrase it, but he said something along the lines of some of the mental faculties that we store within us that help us with survival and progressing are the same faculties that can also drive us like crazy because we try to use those same things for maybe inappropriate aspects of the human experience,
Yeah.
which can be trying to solve like childhood grief or something, and it's like you're trying to tackle it from a problem solving thing. It's like that's
Mhm.
like you're just gonna ruminate,
Mm.
and that actually kind of happened for me, um, in a way, because I, yeah, I was, I was listening to a podcast with Jordan. I've been really on a binge with Jordan Peterson, and he was saying something along the lines of, so he was speaking to Bishop Barron, John Vervaeke, and Jonathan Paju, for these studs in the religious, cognitive science, consciousness kind of
Arena,
space.
yeah.
Yeah, and Jordan made a comment that kind of stuck with me. He was like, he was like, I have this highly intelligent friend that's in more of the technological space, and he did psilocybin when he was a teenager, and he was kind of a degenerate and just getting in trouble as a teenager. And he said once he took psilocybin, the experience that he had, um, the experience almost embedded into him a visceral understanding of morality, what was right and what like just a very, very visceral understanding of what is right and wrong. And since then, his friend has been highly successful in many different ventures, but like overall, he's a very good person.
Mhm.
And um, I, I bring that up because I feel like I've also kind of gone through that over the course of the past few years with like cleaning up my life in certain realms, and then also like diving into this spiritual experience, and then just having more of like a cleaner lens in a way, and to see and feel things more viscerally versus like kind of numbing yourself out to things. And so, yeah, it's like this double edged sword of like, trying to be a healthier and stronger person. And through that, you kind of like swipe away maybe certain coping mechanisms that you were participating in at a younger age. So now it's like you have this clean lens, but it's like, things are more intensified, in a way. So it's like you start to wrestle with the issues of society and like we're, into Bitcoin. And so I've been very passionate about it. Obviously, you are as well.
Mhm.
And going down this proverbial rabbit hole has led me to look at the money system and homelessness. Like I work from home a lot nowadays, but coming to the office, you see all the homelessness in Austin, and Austin is not the worst city in United States, and you see all these different issues, and
Yeah.
for me, it's been hitting me a little bit harder, and so I think that
This is wrong.
yeah. But anyways, I think that's somewhat of a motivation to, kind of read and learn from the Bible or Christ and yeah, that's been one reason for me. So,
It's to get in touch with your own sense of morality?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like, I mean, maybe you can agree or disagree, but there might be this, well, there definitely is, I feel, a moral subjective standard within American society. It's definitely, I would say that that's true. That everybody has maybe postmodernists in a way have their own idea of subjectivity and their hierarchical structures of like what like their values and whatnot. And so for
Mhm.
me, like finding that hierarchical structure of values and morality, and is there some type of transcendent moral law? And I think
Mhm.
C.S. Lewis talks about this in Mere Christianity pretty well from a point of view that, um, if you're not a Christian, you can still kind of grasp. So
Have you watched The Good Place?
I don't think so. No.
It's worth, especially on this kind of measuring morality dimension. I'll try not the plot definitely interweaves with sort of the philosophy it's there to do, but, with at least in the first couple episodes, it's pretty well established. This woman dies, played by Kristen Bell. She ends up in, what appears to be heaven, and that's because between her and all the other people there, they earned a certain number of points, of like good deed points while they were on Earth,
Mm,
and like so, and any action you take on Earth can have like good deed or like positive points or negative points, and so there's this army of accountants up there tallying for Joe Kelly, Shane Larson, like each of our actions at any given point. Um, I guess it's probably it's a mini spoiler, but it's just to say, or as the episodes develop or the plot develops, and they kind of learn more about the system that's in place. There's this question that like, oh wait, like but now like the world is so complex that even like the smallest action to like drive a gas powered car, to drink
mm,
a latte with almond milk, and all the all the water that uses in California, like those every almost every choice you made is so we're all so interconnected. It's contaminated somehow in some way.
yeah.
Somebody you could point to somebody lost in that trade or that exchange. And so it kind of becomes this crisis or as part of the plot line of the show. It's a good show. I recommend it. It was recommended to me, and something I kind of went through in the last couple of weeks.
Mm,
Because yeah, and back to that idea of like your personal sense of God or morals or Christ. And Christ is an interesting one too, because that guy, everyone loves that guy. No one doesn't, man. Like everyone would admit across all the world, like almost all the world religions, like Christ is God. That guy
mm,
knew what he was talking
mm,
about. So like what a figure, what a thing. Um, and then yeah, I do tying it back to like separating out the Bible from actual Bible, separating out like the man that is Christ versus like Christianity or like these things and the church and the people and the organizations that build around it. Um, it's hard. I think at the end of the day, a lot of these are just very personal things.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, some people might ask or come after you with like, "Have you seen what the church has done to?" It's like, "Yeah, well, have you like do football, like professional football?" I don't know if this is a good analogy, but um, professional football players, do they stop their professional career if they find out that Roger Goodell is corrupt? Like, do they stop their what? How do I frame this? Do they discontinue what they have been so dedicated to? It's like a devotion for them, maybe in a way, because someone in the NFL administration is doing bad things, and I would answer that as no. And so, like from like my family, I mean, I think the main reason they fell off of their faith was because of the Catholic Church.
Hmm.
So some of the priests that were um, doing pretty screwed up things, and but to have the discernment to recognize like that's not the spiritual faith, and that's not Jesus Christ. That's a couple bad apples with it.
That's a human organization flaws that enable bad behavior.
Yes.
Bad behavior.
Yeah. So, but that's been a hard hump for me to like take a step towards this, and I've had like a friend or two be like, I know you're looking for some type of structure or spiritual faith, but like, maybe just take your time here, and which I am. So, but
Don't give your allegiance to the bad guys.
yeah, but I tried listening to the video you sent me. That's a pretty dense video. So the title is pretty.
Does God exist? The Jim Rutt show one?
Yeah, does
Yeah.
God exist? And it's like the subtitle is the logical necessity
The Trinity or
of the
something, I wanna
Trinity,
say? Yeah, yeah.
believing in the Trinity.
Yeah.
I got like 40 minutes in, and I was like kind of doing something else, which you can't do.
No.
You cannot. That was
Mm.
a philosophically dense. They use a lot of terminology that I was I could start to understand if I was sitting down and doing nothing. But so anyways, did you get through that whole entire episode, and what came about these two men that were essentially going and utilizing like fundamental philosophical ways of thinking, or using philosophy to break down why it's logical to believe in the Trinity. Um,
Yeah. I'll give it the best treatment I can while,
it is a
yeah,
2 hour
not
episode.
pretending to, like, be deep in it, and I mean, the 2 people too, I would note are, like, in some ways probably collaborators or, of John Vervaeke and, like, others
Yeah.
that you mentioned, so, and Jordan Greenhall had done a episode with Jim previously just about his, like, conversion, and then this was, like, kind of like a follow-up being like, "Well, let me really make the case to you, Jim, why I,
Hmm.
believe this," and to kinda summarize it, it kind of is, it's almost it takes a step back and almost like a kind of a cosmology or cosmological view to say, like, what is, um, what is the universe and what is necessary for, like, a universe to exist or for us to be here? Um, and, so kind of living in that realm of concepts about multiverses and what are
Hmm.
universes that can exist of a set. The the couple things, I'm not gonna be able to trace it all, obviously. It's just one big point about it is just the principle of relationship, and this is something I see a lot in more kind of modern takes in either physics or, like, ways people have found, because there's a lot of ways you treat, in physics, like, object plus object plus object, or, like, you deal with, like, kind of like the object or the tangible thing,
Yep.
but kind of more in modern sciences, we deal with, like, networks, and so it's not about, like, that you have, 10,000 objects here. It's now the more rich data set or the more unique, thing is the connections between those 10,000 things, and so
Mm.
it's like that network, is another layer of analysis or lens on a system, and, and so that this kind of relationship is primary. Relationship is, like, the thing is, both kind of a physics concept, is both, like, applicable in just other, like, there's, like, also a movement about, like, process science, or it's like it's not about, like, it's about the change or the change function, not like the static things.
Yeah.
So that's sort of some of the ideas swirling around in the earlier parts of that. And so when he's talking about this kind of relationship um, piece, and then I can't walk you much further down that path, a bit to be honest. But he does have I think a good structured way of talking about the Trinity and what it represents in terms of if you were to design a universe, or if you needed to have this stuff work in a certain way such that these relationships are true, these relationships hold, you need to have something like what's at work with the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost and what those kind of typically represent,
Mm.
um, in terms of a thing that is not here, and then a thing that is here in the Son, and then like a kind of mediating
The Holy
sort of
Spirit.
relationship between them. So um, it was good. Yeah, I mean, it was great. It reminds me a lot. I spent time um, in the earlier things I found in the library stacks when I was at UT briefly was a book called System and Structure. Like that
Mm.
title, like that name just jumped out at me. And it's this guy's wide ranging essays, and it was just a lot about these kinds of things, or about these and these are things from like the 70s and 80s, which there's still like really good stuff out. I mean, good old books out like from those eras, like still have things that
Mhm.
haven't been fully mined yet. And because his analyses or his things were some of the things that opened my mind up to like um, this concept really kind of between digital and analog. Where digital has this which was very much like it was a big almost awakening for me in a moment because I out of your developmental stages of being a teenager and now a young adult, there was a lot of this like right wrong, like that's the right way, that's the wrong, that's the right way, the wrong. Like that guy's doing it right, that guy's doing it wrong. This is
Mhm.
the right thing, and that kind of almost reminds me of like the morality or some of the like the trick or like the challenge of morality is like I think morality in trying to find yes no answers, that's a fear driven process, or like I like the heuristic that like if you're trying to make it a yes no, or if your instinct is there's a black white here, you may be afraid of something, and you're trying to then like avoid that the black part or the
Mhm.
white part or whatever it is. Um, so my kind of awakening from that experience was this notion of like, well, shit, a lot of things are really gray, and that's not. Um, and that really kind of formed in a lot of even my like early like operational DNA in startups because it's like you think there's always to kind of approach things like there's always one or the other answer is wrong. You always have to move up a level. There's like a meta piece, or there's like,
Mm.
oh well, if you think it's this way and I think it's this, well, let's pop up to like what are our shared goals, or let's pop up to like what is the shared aim here, and then then you kind of remake progress. Um, so yeah, that whether it's that the digital or analog model of things, it just tuned me into like, oh, analog is maybe like more what it is, and I would there's a version of the as we go through eras like the brain. There's always a metaphor for the brain that's based on the latest technologies. There's like this brain is a computer. If your neurons are just
Mhm.
like on off toggles, like something in binary. But really, I like the more the idea of a brain as an analog computer. Analog is the kind of thing that like it tracks with things in like a continuous basis.
Okay.
It's not discrete. It sort of tracks continuously like a thing on a dial. And that just feels like how real life works. Like when we digitize things, we kind of let them out of what is like our day-to-day experience.
Mhm.
Or where you're inserting something, you're laying on like an after thing or something. And so in making something continuous, like a graph that goes step up,
Yep.
step up, step up, like you lost something in that space. So that like even like the fidelity or the richness or the realness of like what you can communicate is missing. And that's why like record players are still prized things to listen to music on because it is all there in a true like analog sense.
Mm.
Biggest irony is the Bluetooth record players where like it's like the record player transmitting over Bluetooth connection to a speaker. It's like you
Yeah,
just lost it, man.
that doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Just ruined the
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
so it's like how to be in a continuous relationship with God, or how to like have that.
without giving away, like, your agency as well. Like, if you're con so you're to kind of, so I can understand what you're saying, like, you do somewhat treat your brain as a computer that you can consistently, um, move forward with action to improve, and to make it healthier, obviously,
Maybe
yeah.
also that it feels like the stream of life comes at you, but no matter what you kind of do, and like you're in it. And then if you're like working or to start, especially like you're in a really like
For sure.
thick
Yeah.
stream. And what happens is like maybe something doesn't go well, or maybe something does go well, and then but you can get in your head, and then you like your head does something that pulls you out of the stream. And
Mm.
sometimes it's useful because like sometimes you need to go in there, you need to think through a plan on a thing, you need to make a decision about something in the business. Like there are those reasons sometimes to kind of escape into the realm of thought, but like the things happen in the business like that's not actually in the business or in like the stream of life. So um that was where yeah like the metaphor like the analog thing kind of yeah let me model myself as like an analog computer for my business or like whatever needs to get done today or whatever
Mm.
is tracking or part of what the organization needs. And
Yeah.
so
Okay.
some of my early philosophy, I suppose.
Yeah. How do you so within the position that you're in, how do you find uh how do you best try to shut your brain off when you need to? Because I'm sure you've gone through a lot of hard decisions with the company and with life in general, but how do you what do you bring into your life that allows you to make these decisions and then just kind of not ruminate on them, but also like still kind of have some balance with contemplation. What what do you?
Yeah. Well, I would like to do more, or invite more of those things in my life. I mean, I've always been a morning person, so just waking up early comes naturally. Don't need an alarm clock to get up at 5:30 or 6 a.m. And
Oh
like,
wow,
I just like that space. It's also time before my kids get up, my
yeah,
wife gets up, so I can get the house to myself. Although you always got to feed the animals first. Freaking
yeah,
dogs and cats,
so
man.
selfish.
But yeah. So try to get up and feed the animals. And then these days or this year, it's been then I read those couple pages of the Bible and then it's just a nice I don't know, it's an intention setting time. It's kind of a like clear-minded. Um, if there's a hard task to do for that day or a thing I kind of need to like get through, that's like my best time to do it.
Mm,
So that's just been the number one thing. And since having a family, working out's been harder. Certain other like of those kind of health habits that had probably sustained me were tuned down took a back seat a little bit,
yeah,
but those will find their ways.
mm,
And, meditation, I did. I got home. I was pretty overwhelmed, like 2 nights ago and just was like, just went upstairs and
meditation's
sat
are
on
good.
a
Yeah,
cushion for 20 minutes. But
yeah.
yeah,
Breath work just does it for me.
breath
I'm
work,
a Wim
dude.
Hof. Just you look kind of like a crazy person if you do it in public, but if you do it just on your couch,
You try the Othership app?
no, not yet. I think you sent that to me though.
Ah, it's a great
I
one,
use
man.
Wim
Yeah.
Hof,
Yeah, well, and
and
I could probably do it too, but, like, they had one of their journeys that was awesome. I did it over a couple weeks. It's like, their chakra alignment journey, which is great,
yeah,
50-minute breathwork session, like, once a week, um, is a, like, truly restorative, like, really cool, psychedelic experience almost in itself.
yeah. Yeah, I was doing, I mean, I usually do like 4 to 5 rounds every morning, but I was also doing like an intense one with a group of people every Wednesday, and man, it just feels good just walking out of it. You just feel so much more relaxed.
Mhm.
Um, cool, man. So yeah, there was, I'm trying to remember, there was, I really appreciate, as I've been working with Unchained for 3 years, just over 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, man. I joined in
Proud to have you
June.
here.
Yeah, it's an honor to be serving the company, and yeah, I remember I was working for a traditional financial firm only for like 8 or 9 months, and I just started learning about Bitcoin, fell down the rabbit hole, the
Mhm.
whole story, and um, yeah, joining was such a huge thing for me to move out here to Austin to be a part of this company and be a part of a company that has a leadership that I respect. It just feels like across the entire company, there is a lot of respect. There's a lot of um, transparency, and yeah, one thing I think I remarked to you. I think it was maybe 6 months ago or so, because you brought up your father
Yeah.
and how you had a special relationship with him, and um, through the your mom passing, I think, when you were
Mhm.
younger, and
Yeah.
so the same thing, happened to me when I was younger as well, and so to be able to, um, it was pretty motivational for me to see your position in the company and to be able to speak in front of people and say, "Hey, like, this is what I'm going through with my father and, like, this and that," and I think it was at, the Unchained week as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
and, to have 'cause I feel like a lot of, CEOs or anybody that's at a pretty high position, like, they typically wanna hide that, right? And not be able to talk about some of these personal things and to be able to just let everybody know and be
Yeah, I
transparent
can
that
yeah, that was a fun I mean, there's
it
like
lit
the
something in me. It was just like that was really cool to be able to see a leader to kind of express it in a very appropriate and like just like a very your calm demeanor, but also like, hey, this is what I'm going through. And so it just kind of rang a bell for me in the heartstrings because I also had a similar dynamic when I was younger. And yeah, I think it's a good way to be a leader in modern times because I feel like yeah, a lot of maybe in previous times some just didn't like to ever touch any territory of like expressing any of that kind of
Mhm.
stuff that's obviously gonna affect you and it might leak over into your career. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a funny some of the backstory in that, like, so the Unchained Week, got our, like, 60, 70 people, coming to town for that, the whole company kind of thing, and I remember, like, that morning up, and it was, like it was a day or 2 before that my dad went on hospice, and, like, the hospice journey is just one of those things you learn. It's like, "Oh, no, we're not here to make them better," you know? So, oh, yeah,
mm,
like, injuries, cuts, things like that, they don't help to go try to solve it. It's just like, "No, it's about comfort cares," you know? So it's like there's kind of the shock of this way of like, "Oh,"
yeah,
you're used to most dealing with most medical things about, like, "How do I get them better?"
yeah,
But so, that move and then also the matter of, like, is this person gonna do they have 7 days? Do they have 7 months? Do they have and there's no way to get a solid answer. Um, and so then, yeah, and then the 2 days have that 2 days later have that kind of, whole company thing. I remember that morning of, I'm picking up Drew at his apartment, and I'm like, "Drew, I'm just drawing a blank on these slides, man. All I can think about is my dad."
mm,
And this grad member, he's like, "You guys should talk about that." Or like, it was just kind of this
mm,
nudge of like, because I was really trying to deal with, like, how do I kind of honor both things happening right now? I'm in grief. I am distressed. Like, this is like pulling my psyche in this direction.
yeah,
And then I also want to do do the thing for the company, like be
yeah,
there
yeah,
for all these people there and like say something inspiring, you know? And so Drew helped me like just recognize like the merging that could be there and then like, yeah, to kind of speak something more poignantly, I suppose, about what I'm going through with my dad, but then also why I also admire the guy or like why I am
mhm,
like in such a state with him and to talk about things I learned as a leader from him is I believe what we kind of covered there. And yeah, I think there's ways and this concept of vulnerability. Spent time looking at the Brene Brown stuff or
yeah,
like
yeah,
she said good things about it. I come around in different ways too on vulnerability because I think um it can be what you're talking about where the vulnerable part is the sharing, the like personal stuff. Um, vulnerability can like move. Well, what's vulnerable today can be different than what's vulnerable later,
mm,
and what's vulnerable for people can be different. So it's like it's often vulnerable to share those things, but sometimes it's vulnerable to like tell somebody to fuck off, or you're like could be like
not not be the people pleaser. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So it's kind of a that's been a journey for me too, recognizing like what I think is. I was oh I'm being vulnerable here by sharing this, but I'm not, or like the actual vulnerable thing is like something else when
yeah,
so um
yeah. What is I mean, maybe aside from that, one of the biggest challenges you've gone through since building Unchained. So you started the company in 2016?
technically, yeah.
Yeah. Um, to see, it started off with you and Drew, and then, uh, I think when I joined in 2021, there was I mean, maybe a few months prior, because that was a Series A.
hmm
Um, it's probably like, I don't know, 20 people on the team, 20,
Yeah, I mean,
25.
yeah, 'cause stepping into 2021, we were at like on the right on the board of like 20, maybe getting close to 25, and then we ended the year with like 60 or 70 or
Yeah.
something probably.
Yeah. So it's obviously expanded and it's been a journey. We've seen some, Parker was on our team and it was really cool to see his leadership. And,
hmm
um, yeah, I'm just curious, what is one of the biggest challenges you've had to kind of go through, um, being in your position and developing such a unique company? I always feel, like I need to stay humble, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, it's like a badge of honor, like working for Unchained because it's like this new company that is setting the foundation for, something mankind has never seen. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, that must come with a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I mean, it's a privilege to work on something that where if you take a step back, you feel like it's, just a unique moment, a unique thing for our civilization, unique intersection of technology, Bitcoin, and all these things. Um, I say for me, I mean, the challenging things of usually of any organization of people is the people. And that's what leads for me on a very, you know, self-inquisitive, self, you know, development kind of journey.
Mm,
Um, and just self-awareness, knowing what is hard or easy for me, and then trying to set my days up or set things up to be maximally effective. And yeah, it's tough to let people go,
mm,
either because I'm letting them go or because they choose to leave. I develop a lot of feelings for the people
yeah,
here at Unchained, and so in ways that uh, I just love it. I love, uh, you know, on multiple levels. If everything goes to shit tomorrow for Unchained, one thing I'll always be able to take away is like everyone's growth here.
mm,
Everyone will be able to get better jobs tomorrow than they could have when they walked in, or like things like that. Like everyone's skills are everyone's like leveled up here in like a real way. So that's something I take a lot of pride in. And then when I feel like, yeah, that I'm that the organization that's here as much to serve customers, is also here to serve the employees. I'm here to serve the employees, and so wanting to do my best at that, have us all to do the best at that,
mm,
um, is a real thing for me. So yeah, when people leave, and like the grief is real for me. The the emotional cycle of that is real.
mm,
So that's probably one of the harder things.
yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I tend to also be somewhat of a I think that's why I've been doing this podcast is I'm able to connect with people and I'm able to tap into sensing their feelings and understanding who they are and like how to navigate. Like I have this ability to navigate around conversations, and I think that's due to the ability to be empathetic. And I
Hmm.
can imagine being a leader. I used to work in restaurants before this,
Mm.
right out of college, and yeah, I had to be a restaurant manager for people that were like 15 years older than me, worked at the restaurant for 10 years. I'm a new graduate and I had to step in and just be like, yep, I'm your manager now. And just
Yeah,
like fresh. And it was super
it's
uncomfortable.
freaky.
It's, yeah. And they would push back on me a lot. And there's a lot of times I had to be at least like have a conversation with them or make a hard decision. And man, I was not, back then, especially I was like 22, 23. It was a hard learning curve. The aspect of, um, communicating, negotiating with people, and so yeah, I'm sure it's been tough, but um,
Yeah, that's a hard one thing, and I mean, a lot of it comes back to treat people how you'd want to be treated. The good old golden rule,
mm,
and another back to Christ thing: do to your neighbor as you'd have done to yourself, and that gets you so far. If you take that idea really seriously,
yeah,
how would you want to be fired? How would you want to welcome this person on their first day, or how would you want to be welcomed on your first day?
mm,
Kind of a thing. So like, just take that bar to everything on like a real standard. It
mm,
feels like it's like 80% of it. If you're really in touch with yourself, if you're really honest.
yeah. Aside from building on chain and doing what you're doing with the company, what are you most excited for in the future? Like, what gets the gears going in life?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a part of what Drew and I's early friendship and long term relationship in a lot of ways is shared curiosity around science, complexity theory, complexity science. Um, I'd love to have him listen to that podcast
Mm,
episode. I've sent him other ones with Jim Rutt that are on like Stuart Kaufman's latest cosmology and stuff like that.
oh,
So, yeah, I think that's if I had the more time for it, I would dedicate more time to like actually feeling knowledgeable or actually feeling kind of way I'm studied about that stuff. Um, because I think there is just a lot of great things happening um in the sciences, and like things I have to reconcile with now ChatGPT and
mm-hmm,
large language models kinds of thing. So, um, I'm excited for all of our futures. I have a family, 2 young girls,
Mm.
4-year daughter and a 18-month-old. So they're awesome. Super excited for their future. And my wife and I are longtime Austinites, been here for 15 years,
Oh, wow.
and likely here for the foreseeable future. But we're now in that kind of age or that stretch of like, where do we want to spend our summers? Where do we want to go? Just got back from a trip to Northern Ireland and Scotland.
Cool.
Like both of those places, kind of tickled our genes being there in Ireland. I want to say,
What
and
about
like
it?
I like the rolling green hills. Like it's called the Emerald Isle, kind of in reasons because it's just a very green. There's very like all these different hues of green with it. And that was cool, and not and we were there during like beautiful weather in July and early August. So
Mm.
I know it's not always like that. So
Yeah.
take that with a grain of salt, but just really good blue weather and good beaches. Like actually, the
Mm.
beaches were nice, good sand. So we just yeah, we like that. So I think just kind of trying to find that right balance pattern of the company building, family time, yeah, how to be a pretend scientist.
Mm. Are you
Really good.
Irish?
Yeah, yeah,
Whole
probably
family?
70% probably Irish or 70, 80% Irish. And my 100% on my mom's side, and then my dad's side, like 60, 70%.
Okay. Something that comes to mind, speaking of your dad, I know you sailed the world with him, and I don't know if you want to get into that, but I was kind of curious just to hear about that journey with your father and sailing.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
It was a remarkable thing. My dad, when I was 13, my mom died, cancer, and my dad pulled my sister and I aside, and he'd always wanted to go sailing, and he was like, "Kids, I think now's maybe the time to do that. Let's try it out." And I said, "Sure, Dad." So we sold everything. We were living in Anchorage at the time, and we drove to Florida, bought a sailboat, moved onto a sailboat. It was a catamaran, and yeah, it was 3 years. It wasn't around the world, that was although that was one of his early ambitions to do some circumnavigation. We just took our time. Um, Went through the Caribbean for about 2 years. Went through the Panama Canal. Ended up as far west as the Galapagos, before and by then I kinda turned 18 and was kinda, like, ready to get out, on my own.
Mm.
That was an adventure, man, and
So
that's
for
something.
5 years,
3 years.
3 years.
3 years,
Okay.
yeah, and so that's how I did, like, my later years of high school and through, like, an independent study program, kind of a homeschool,
Okay.
but I was very fortunate because being a 15, 16-year-old in these island places and in, Venezuela and Latin America, I had a lot easier time than my sister, who's a couple years younger than me.
Okay.
My dad wasn't really keen to let her, venture too far out in some of those places, but I had a lot of freedom. So like and there was really not a lot of other peers my age. Most people I'm meeting at these marinas or these places are older, and so I got a lot of experience just kind of navigating the world,
Mm.
somewhat as an adult, or like kind of getting you know used to talking to adults, I guess, in a way. And
Sure.
so that was one of the things that was really different for me coming back to the U.S. and then trying to start here at school was like, um, and why I got started in my entrepreneurial journey early was probably because yeah, I know how to talk to people to get things done.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
mind calling and like ordering that thing or filling out this paperwork,
Yep.
doing the stuff. And yeah, the boat journey. I mean, it was also almost its own kind of spiritual experience because I can remember moments being on the boat and we're days away from any kind of shore and on the middle of the ocean. And it's just me, my dad, my sister. I'm on watch. It's like 2 a.m. I look up, it's the sky full of stars and a moon, and it's like all the most important people in the world are like right there
Yeah.
with me, right here.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just like the ways of that, and like whatever point of absolute like nervous system regulation you can kind of reach was probably something I hit like on that experience, and it set me up for a long time. I think having um that experience.
Yeah. Something that just came to mind was, my buddy sent me a funny video. This guy that he's a stand-up comedian, and he was just saying how, 'cause, like, I talk about, uh, doing somatic breath work and regulating your nervous system, doing all these things. He was like, "You know what? Mindfulness was just sitting on a bus and looking at the rain, dude, just on the window and just,
Yes, I
like,
think I
doing
saw
these
that clip too.
just
Yeah,
these super."
mindfulness right there.
He's
Yeah.
just like it's just being bored in the '90s or even before
Yes.
that. You just had to sit there and be with your thoughts, and, nowadays, we're just constantly not bored. Like, we're constantly,
Hmm.
doing something to fill our time, and I find I do that all the time, so, um but, yeah, I mean, look how often do you look at the stars? I mean, I don't often, you know? and it is a sight to see, and I'm sure it is just a natural nervous regulator.
Yeah, not
But
enough.
yeah, man. So, uh, any like, um, so when you were on the boat with your sister and your father, was there any like crazy incidents or any like close calls or dangerous scenarios when you were out there? I know there's.
Early on, like the first couple of trips we would take, we'd had a dinghy that we would tow,
Okay.
and we towed on a rope or a line, and that rope would end up getting caught up in the propeller like a couple times. So like as you're plodding along as a boat, and then like if you're when you're tacking, if the boat slows down, and then the dinghy kind of keeps rolling, and then like gets by the boat, the rope would wrap under the propeller.
Okay.
So yeah, a couple of those early passages, it was like, we're out there bouncing up and down, and I would put on like snorkel goggles and gear and go down and try to get this thing untangled from the propeller. Like
Oh
that was
boy.
one of the dangerous things. More dangerous thing I attempted just because, like, yeah,
Oh my
I could have
god.
been definitely some ways I could have knocked my noggin, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
I
for
was I
sure.
was keen to do it. My dad was lucky I was there to do it, too. So, but that and a lot of things like weather wise. I mean, you do get weather reports. You're not usually taken off, blind, or like we didn't, or like we would get weather reports, understand before making passages. Um, some of the more intense weather was like in the Southwest Caribbean. There's a lot of swell activity there because like all the winds kind of come out of the Northeast, and so like out of the whole Caribbean Sea, you just get this like big swells, and so
Mhm.
we we were like surfing on one of these waves. We did like 17 knots, which I don't know if you know what that means. That's really fast for a sailboat. So there's kind of some intense times.
Mm.
And then that time I mentioned too, like being so far from shore, that was really in our passage between Panama and the Galapagos, and that was an intense experience because it was kind of, I want to say it was like February, and so that region of the world near the equator, there are trade winds kind of most of the year, but actually for those couple months, I think maybe probably January, December, January, March, or sorry, December, January, February, it's like glass, like there's
Mm.
no wind. It's called the doldrums, and so um, here we are, 3 days out from any shore, no sights, no lights or anything other than stars at night, and like the water is as flat as a table. So
Mm.
that was just kind of one of those other like trippy things about
Yeah.
Mother Nature, just what's it like to be in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and um, not have anything. So
Yeah.
other than that, the only other intense, nights out in these foreign countries, places like that as a teenager, probably, could have had some accident. Oh yeah, I did have an accident. I was I took our dinghy to like a bar as a teenager
Mhm.
and drank way too much and then crashed the dinghy and lost some teeth. So that taught me. I've never gotten that drunk ever since. So,
Yeah. Taught you a lesson.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I was wondering if let's say you Unchained got to a place where you felt like, it was in a good place, you could automate it, you could step aside. What is one endeavor that you would get into, whether it's like the study of consciousness or theology or physics? What is something that you would embrace and potentially, or would you just vacation for the rest of your life?
No, I'd have to do something. I mean, I love reading. I've got probably close to 800 books or so at home.
800,
Only
wow.
uh, only like a few hundred at most I've read. So big anti library kind of thing happening at home. So I'd want to make a bigger
Same.
dent. And it's nice. I think once you also sort of to build a personal library like that, you kind of get to see the clusters of topics and things you see, and like they're like I love bibliographies. I love like the richness of like you know get a new book or open a book that you think might be about them. Well, let me see if they really cite the good stuff. Let me see
Mm,
if like their actual sources are like the legit ones or like who
yeah.
shows up in the bibliography for them. Like yeah, like they're on the trail. So yeah, I think for me, I early on had some passionate ideas or some things that were in the range of either more modern psychology or actually borrowing from like previous decades versions of psychology that like is were kind of forgotten but now are more relevant today. And I just want to chase out those things, and whether that's because I personally research them or I can help fund or raise money for things that work in those areas.
Mhm.
Some friends of mine started the Quayle Research Institute in recent years. I think that has an amazing mission. The
What's
original co-founders there were a Buddhist philosopher and a psychedelics researcher. And so some of the foundings team changed, but Quayle Research Group is still around. And yeah, it's really, if you think about the intersections of those things, like Buddhism practices, the
Mhm.
jhanas,
Mhm.
those kind of states,
Yeah.
those are like heightened or what's that, altered states of
Yep.
consciousness. Psychedelics obviously induce altered states of consonant, con- altered states of consciousness,
Mhm.
and then the philosophy, or like what is the theory that's at work that like makes it so those two things happen? What can explain how those things happen? And
Mm.
so, I mean, some of the great things that came out, that Michael Johnson, who was the uh, philosopher of those three, he wrote a paper. His thing was about neural annealing, or kind of modeling the brain as what's happening as your brain kind of cools into these states. It's like steel, and annealing is like borrowed from like working with steel and metals. So when you want to work with a metal, you have to heat it up, and you heat it up, and it becomes malleable again, and then it cools. And like that's that process, the molecules in the metal, they anneal into like the shape, or the new shape that you've pounded it in. So like that, I just like that as a good metaphor, and possibly good, um, maybe some science, or maybe some good more scientific analyses that really kind of get a sense of what's happening when the brain like kind of replastifies maybe to
Mm.
those experiences, and then
Yeah.
kind of recoheres around some new beliefs, or a
Yes.
new state.
Yeah, this is, something that I love to get into. 'Cause once I went on my ayahuasca retreats, I was just flabbergasted. I was like, "Alright, I gotta learn more about what just happened to my
Hmm.
brain and what
Hmm.
happened to, my state of consciousness," and, I've gotten actual an actual, somewhat of an opposing, theory or view from Jonathan Page. So that same podcast I was referring to earlier with, Jordan Peterson,
Yeah.
Bishop Barron, Jonathan, Paju, and John Vervaeke. Um, Jordan was, like, referencing how, he was speaking to, I always pronounce his last name wrong, but it's the author of The Immortality Key, Brian Murascu, I think his name
Mm.
is. He's been on Joe Rogan, a bunch of podcasts, and the book is, a big, deep dive. Like, he actually, I mean, it's a pretty intense, detective work with traveling to, I believe it's Rome and Greece. I think it's Greece, and going to ancient, ritual sites where they have these like vases or containers that they would use to make wine for certain like religious rituals, and they found I think it's ergot. Um, ERCOT is the Texas grid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Er ergot, I think, is I'm not a chem whiz here, but I think that's the chemical, um, s sediment that was essentially remaining on these vases that some of these, Greeks in ancient times, I think this is before Christ, were participating in, so they were utilizing, psychedelics way back then as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And, so Jordan in this conversation, because 'cause you've got a bishop and you've got Jonathan Paju, who's a pretty devout Christian. I don't think he's ever participated in, any kind of psychedelic experience. And then John Vervaeke, I think, has. John's not, I don't know if he's an atheist. I think he's agnostic. But, uh, you know, Jonathan Paju had a very interesting take because and Bishop Barron, like, so it was somewhat of a, uh, opposing to what I have, gone down, and so I have it here. I took some notes 'cause I'm trying to write a piece on this, and so he was
Hmm.
saying how he pushed back on the psychedelic movement, and he was saying, he argued that it offers a deceptively simple solution. He notes that while people focus on the substances themselves, like spiked wine, they overlook the crucial rituals in which these were traditionally embedded. This
Hmm.
reductive approach, where attention fixates on the tool alone, perpetuates materialism. Um, Paju contends that when psychedelics ripped open the veil in the 1960s, they did so in a world lacking the societal coherence and shared rituals of ancient times. Introducing these mind altering substances into our individualistic society, he argues, leads to fragmented, frameless experiences that divide rather than unite people. And I actually would somewhat agree with that. Um, I think that
Yeah.
we're such a complex society in modern America and the United States, but even the '60s, I think that, this is such a melting pot of obviously of cultures and traditions, and so to just kind of throw LSD or all these different substances into the mix, I think he's got
Yeah, I think I mean, his characterization of the differences in the different times
for sure, yeah.
is definitely accurate. Whether then that leads to, like, dismissing psychedelics today,
Not completely,
I don't
yeah.
know that
No, I wouldn't
that
dis
holds as much, but,
yeah,
it points to some of the risks.
for sure, and I thought that was a great observation and theory, but I don't think it's I don't think you should just totally dismiss these things, these substances or tools, and, you know, Jordan I love Jordan Peterson because I feel like he is genuinely trying to be as honest as he possibly can, and his whole, uh, you know, his whole,
He's earnest.
yeah, I mean, he's earnest, and he also, talks about you should always tell the truth in every single circumstance within your life, and not everybody does that. I can say I haven't done that,
Mhm.
and even in circumstances that might seem, like, pretty ridiculous, like, you know, I brought up, like, an example of, like, if you're someone in Germany during World War II hiding a Jewish family, when the Germans come knocking or the Nazis come knocking on your door, are you gonna tell them the truth? Like, what do you say? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, I would like to hear what Jordan would say in that, and I'm sure he would find some kind of interesting way to look at it, but, so anyways, yeah, I think it's, pretty fascinating, like, you brought up, that, foundation and how they're using Buddhist philosophy and some psychedelic substances, and I've seen some remarkable or heard some remarkable
Well, and
stories.
I even like, I mean, one of the, senior advisors there is a guy, Stephen Lahar, who, like, has done immense amounts of LSD or immense amounts, maybe others, but, like, a lot of it, maybe LSD in particular, and that and, like, through and but it's taken a very scientific approach because, like, what is happening there is still a change from the norm that might help illustrate what's happening during the norm.
Mhm.
And so I really like his, and he's got some, like, visuals or drawings of these of just the kind of, like, the world inside your head, just the way, our hardware, software of the kind of brain and what and electrical activity have to, like, kind of have a shape or a model of the world, both visually and physically, and just kind of like the way that has to be running all the time. Um, and how maybe a psychedelic experiences help put that on a different light, or like
Mm,
help kind of see around that, or kind of, postulate certain things about the experience
mm.
of perceiving and taking in sensory data.
Yeah, I read a section of a book that was talking about 2 types of theories when it comes to consciousness, productive and transmissive. So
Okay.
I leaned towards the transmissive. So the transmission, it's kinda like a radio. Like, the radio is not producing the music, but it's transmitting from you know, so there's obviously a separate location where the music was played, and,
Yeah.
maybe at a separate point in time, or it could be live, and it's transmitting through the radio,
Okay.
and, you're then hearing that, you know, that band play, and so with the brain, there could be your state of consciousness in certain, um your brain is essentially, an organ, obviously a physical organ that transmits, consciousness and can have the potential to transmit other beings or other, like, people refer to, like, mediums in certain ways, and so that kind of has sparked my interest just because of my own psychedelic, participations, and feeling like there was something that was in the presence of certain ceremonies, and it's like that it just felt so apparent, like, that was like, how did I produce that? Like, that was I have never seen I don't like, there's things that I, would see visually within my mind's eye that I was like, "I've never seen that before,"
Mm.
and it felt like it was like a futuristic, but also, like, it was like a combination of, like, a futuristic, um almost like the lost city of Atlantis, like, supposedly, they had these optimal technologies that blend together so that the human can like, experiences, like, you know, you're still very healthy, but you have these incredible technologies, and it felt like I was in like, an ancient setting, but the technology there was unreal, and it was quite a thing to see, and you know, I witnessed some crazy things as well. I watched certain people, yeah, just, what they described to me was that there was a cabloco. It was like a Native American spirit that can
Mm.
transmit into the space, and embody into into that person's, their body. And they do these things that are pretty interesting to watch. And then you speak to them after, and they're not like, you know, uh, insane people. Like they're well balanced people, and
Yeah.
then they talk about these experiences. Like, yeah, it's like certain spirits that embody us, and then they transmit through us. And like I talk to people. Some people, depends on who you are. You can find that very interesting, or you'd be like, you're crazy for participating and stuff like that. But I think it's amazing. I think that it expands our understanding of like what is consciousness. How does our brain? How do our brains work? Um, and so just I'm super. I would actually lean towards maybe doing the same thing if I were to like step away from wherever I'm working in, I don't know, 20, 30 years or
Mm.
whatever, to look at this kind of stuff. And it's just something that I'm just so excited about. Like like now it's theology, but like the combination of theology and psychedelic
Yeah,
stuff
growing
is.
up, I either wanted to be a priest or a psychologist. It was like, kind of my 2 routes to, like, trying to understand the truth or understand myself and ourselves.
You're gonna preach at the next all hands.
Dude, there's a Bible channel at the
There
company,
is, yeah.
it's hot happening. It's hot
Simon's holding it down there.
for sure.
Um, so yeah, man, I really yeah, I think this topic in general is something that I'm always excited about, and to push kind of the boundaries, and try to also have the courage to like to know when you're talking to people that might be really biased, or maybe they're somewhat afraid to talk about it because they're
Mhm.
so kind of like Graham Hancock, how he's gotten so. Do you know who that is?
Not quite.
He's been on Rogan a lot, and he essentially presents a different hypothesis for ancient history.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't really follow him that much, so I couldn't really dive into the specific ancient historical paths. But he's presented different information that is contrasting and different than what classical historians have been
Yeah.
teaching. And so he essentially, it's like this dogmatic, really like filled with anger, opposing pushback on him.
Mm.
So yeah, I just say that because like you want to be able to have the courage to explore in new ways, but also not like hold yourself back to explore those boundaries, or those territories, because other people are saying, well, that's ridiculous. Like you shouldn't,
Yeah.
so um but yeah, man. Jose, how are we doing on time? 6:07.
Hour back.
Okay, cool. Um Huh. I mean, I feel like we could go down that route a little bit more.
Bring it
Uh,
on.
um, so, uh, every, ayahuasca ceremony that I've done, has been in a spiritual lineage, that is called the Santo Daime.
'Kay.
The Santo Daime, has a symbol of the cross, but it's a double crucero,
Mm.
and they believe that they're invoking, the second coming of Christ. Like, they think it's the second coming of Christ.
Mhm.
It's the only spiritual lineage that I've heard of, and that I I thought I had a friend that said it's, like, really the only ayahuasca religion or spiritual tradition where they focus on Christ and they invoke. I don't know if you wanna use Christ consciousness, because some New Age spirituality uses that term, and some theologians don't like that term.
Mhm.
Um, but they're invoking this type of consciousness or being that it resembles Christ.
Mm.
And I don't know what to say about that. I think it's, something that really perplexes me, and it's interesting how I've naturally gravitated towards learning more about Christ. And every time I've gone and participated in these ceremonies, there does seem to be like it almost feels like there is a much greater, uh, um, I don't know, being, sentient being, whatever you want to call it, that is present in the ceremonies. They call it the flow of, or
Mhm.
the current. And also, yeah, my own states of consciousness during and then even after ceremonies. It's like my senses are, I'm able to see certain things that uh, physical, my physical senses in certain ways. And so I thought that was pretty interesting how there's like, it's a relatively new religion that believes in uh, that, because I believe in the Holy Bible. They talk about how Christ will return. and he was this 6'7" African American man in Brazil that was in the jungles. He was a rubber tapper,
Hmm.
and he created this religion.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was poor, wasn't educated, and yeah, it's been perplexing me, and it's been capturing my attention as well, or curiosity. And I don't know, I'm guessing you probably never heard of that before, but uh, yeah, it's something that I've wanted to learn more about. Like how, I mean, there's probably no way that you could prove any of that. You know, it's the second coming of Christ through
Hmm.
these substances, but it's interesting how that they've developed that kind of doctrine, and um,
I think I trust the feeling, I trust the faith, that's there for that kind of thing. And it's the thing. It's like, yeah, even like it's so good. I mean, about the Bible or any of these things that like you don't have to go really too extra far in your beliefs versus just like reading them and things. I mean, like the
mhm,
Bible, and there's one of my favorite quips from the my first couple months of reading it is like this on the moral codes kind of ideas. When you plow your fields, don't don't plow to all the edges. Don't plow the corners.
mm,
Keep those for the sojourners, the wanderers, the homeless. Don't try to get all these. There's like little parables like that. It's
yeah,
this kind of idea, and it just really grounds like a type of morality for a community that is that's good and that's common in a lot of all these religions. And so, yeah, I feel like things like those works are like the outputs of humans like going through or struggling or seeing these things, perceiving these things, and um, by putting that down helps make us all a little bit better by recognizing those things. And so, yeah, that motion, I wonder about that. What is that looks for a second coming or believes there is a second coming? I don't know. I wonder what that's feeding or what that's fed upon,
mm, yeah, I don't know.
what that source is from.
Mm,
Whether it's absolutely true or possible in a metaphysical like absolute sense, or just in a more maybe like person society. You know, what is the psychology happening there
mm,
on some level? Um, but yeah, I know. I mean, I know people have you have those experiences, and you're kind of like, oh, I saw what I saw, I felt what I felt. I'm
yeah,
damn sure, you know.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I didn't throughout my experience, I didn't really see any symbolisms that resembled Christ, but I it was just a constant shape shifting of images within my mind's eye that all yeah, just invigorated just a feeling that yeah, something was present um in those containers. And so
mhm.
it's yeah, but this it's very, very difficult to discern or like take anything away. Like it's such a long ceremony and all these things that happen to you. I mean, you just really pluck away like a sliver of whatever happens. So um cool, man. Well, I think I don't know if you're on a time limit, but
No, it's the only other route I'm curious if you've explored is just kind of like coaching, or like I feel like that's kind of at least for me, my journey of the last couple of years has been I've tried a couple of different coaches, in either like personal development settings or business settings, or
Sure.
um, and it's often temptation. I feel like they overlap a lot of probably the circles or places you're in, or with like other coaches or people that are like in the coaching track. Um, that was almost briefly inspired some time back. So like, oh, maybe I want to be a coach, but I don't know, man. There's a big wave where a lot of people getting into coaching. I feel like that
Sure.
were once entrepreneurs, and it's like they're out of the hurt and the challenge and the sweat. They don't really want to do that again. But the coaching other people going through it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Has that been a thing for you?
I've thought about it. I've been around a few friends that are doing that. I'm in like a men's community right now.
Hmm.
Went to a conference called the Do Hard Things conference this year and last year.
Nice.
This guy named Zach Homel co-founded it with his friend Petey, who's a pastor.
Hmm.
So there was a lot of coaches there that are doing their own entrepreneurial path, and so there seems to be like yeah, on Twitter or formerly Twitter, now X. There's more content creators that also do these like online communities that can be. I mean, it can be a plethora of a very wide range of whatever you want to do. Whether it's life coaching, I don't really know. Like I think Zach and my buddy Jay, they kind of say they're a life coach, but they hone in on nutrition, strength training, stillness and meditation, weight loss, and how that will help you with other aspects of your life. And there was another coach there that does endurance training, so like Ironmans and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I've thought about it,
What would you
but
coach on if you could?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not like an expert in the gym. I mean, I feel like I could pick up. I think doing like mobile, like actually, a guy named Paul Check.
Mm,
Spell his last name Chek, and he has created the Check Institute. I would actually recommend taking a look at it because it's a pretty comprehensive health protocol that looks at the body as a system of systems, and so doesn't just try to attack one thing. Like traditional medicine will just you have a headache, you take a Advil or whatever, and
yeah.
so it's a very it's I try to use other words than holistic because holistic's like commonly used, but it's a approach that doesn't use well. You can still, I mean, they don't like um, push away modern medicine. Like they don't. It's not like they don't encourage
Hmm.
surgery or stuff like that, but they're able to uh, look at the body, the nervous system, your circulatory system, and all these different aspects, so that you can just live a life that's more optimal. And the way that he has incorporated all these methods, and he's got certifications and a school academy, and I've thought about taking that because I think it's, even if I wasn't going to be a coach, I think I would apply that to
Mm,
myself and my family and
hmm.
friends, and like even if I didn't walk away as a coach, I would love to just be able to tell people, anybody that's just like, yeah, man, I've been having this, like my daughter or
Yeah.
myself has had this issue, and it's like, well, try this out. Like I've when I tore my Achilles 5 or 6 months ago,
Oof.
I went to a Czech practitioner to do physical therapy for the first 2 weeks, and then I went back to Mass and did just regular traditional, like a traditional facility.
Hmm.
But she just like, she was just telling me what, taking a look at nutrition and like looking at all these different aspects that the traditional place is just giving you isolated movements,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she's giving you all these like, she had me stand up straight, and she had this string and then this like little almost like pyramid thing, metallic thing tied at the bottom, and so she was aligning my spine and like looking at my spine because when you lose a leg to stand on, your hips shift,
Yeah.
and so there's just
Now
different things,
compensation
yeah,
has to
that
develop. Yeah.
that happen. So they're looking at everything,
Yeah.
which I think is what we should focus on as a society. I mean, I think something that I've been passionate about is my mother passed away from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and when I was 3. So what I've recently found out, and this brother and sister, I forgot their names. They're making a couple rounds though on their podcasting tour. They were on Tucker Carlson, and they spoke to and other podcasts, but
Hmm.
they spoke to the pharmaceutical industry, our food system, and Monsanto and Bayer. Essentially, um, they're a combined company now, but the pesticides that they use are potentially the cause of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Oh, wow.
And so back in the '90s, no one knew. They
Yeah.
were like, "Well,
Yeah.
but, so there's just like these little, like, that was like the big motivator and the drive for me, and I've talked about that on my podcast many times, but, I just see what's like how, our food system's not in a good place right now, at
No, we don't
least
understand why we're all getting fat. We don't understand these, there's
sick
all
and
kinds of theories. Yeah. And like,
yeah,
yeah, so many, yeah, just rates of cancer, all these things.
yeah. So that's something that I've been passionate about. I think it came from, the passing of my mother, and kind of just in finding out that it could have potentially been, the pesticides that we use. And I understand that maybe we use these pesticides to kind of scale more and bring that out to
Moral
society.
question. Yeah. Can you,
But
if you
yeah,
can feed a billion more people with it, but then
right. Then you
100 billion get cancer. I don't know
right.
what. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I love working at Unchained, and um I enjoy working for this company, and
Thanks,
But
man. Blown away to have you here. So many good people.
yeah, yeah, we got a great crew. Like, the caliber of character, it's
The characters.
unbelievable. And I think it's pretty amazing to see that, like, how I don't know, based off my observations, you can tell me if you experience the same thing, but, it seems that what Unchained has to offer is a suite of products and services that help people, you know, preserve their generational wealth through Bitcoin, and then by studying Bitcoin and understanding how the money system can be improved in a way, can also help society in many different
Mhm.
areas. Like Safety talks about the fiat standard, and gets into the academics and food and all those different sectors of society, and then you got kind of break it down with proof of work with your character and like how you can be better in society. And it seemed to me like this company Unchained, the value, like what I recognized right away, because I became a Bitcoiner in 2020, bought Bitcoin, didn't hold my keys for 3 months, then I went right to Unchained,
Mm.
and I recognized what Unchained was offering, and just the utility of it. It's a pure. There's just so much value, right? And so the ethos of excuse me, of what it has to offer, to kind of, yeah, allow businesses, individuals, corporations to hold their own keys, and to have some sovereignty, and to preserve their wealth. I feel like it just, yeah, it naturally attracted a plethora of really great individuals with integrity. And I mean, I mentioned Parker the other day, or not the other day, a few moments ago, and
Mhm.
clearly something stuck out to him. And I look at Parker. I have a lot of respect for his just how he moves forward as a man,
Mhm.
and then also just he's so mission driven as well. And
Oh, yeah.
um, but that's just one person of a few dozen, and to see people that come in, and how, not even just with how smart they are with, maybe whether they're an engineer or their knowledge of other things, their hobbies, and just, I don't know, it just attracts a lot of like really great people.
It's great, and that's why I don't use the word privilege lightly because of what we get to work on and who we get to work on it with. And there's that, yeah, there's real values here that gets to come out that are very aligned with Bitcoin, aligned with like what's good for people, and um, so yeah, I'm just pumped.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for having me on your
Dude, it
show.
was a pleasure. It was a long time coming. It took, I feel like, yeah, we talked about this for a year. So,
So what you got to do, you got to get into you got to start your Bible in a year program,
yes.
and then let's catch up in a year when
Okay.
you're through to through it further, and then
Yeah.
let's compare notes.
Yeah. So I want to do like, I kind of want to buy a Bible study book. I saw
Hmm.
some individual last night actually had this huge thing, and there's like a geographical map, and was able to
Yeah,
describe like Paul's journey, and
yeah.
so I
Hey,
could do
don't
that.
sleep on the Bill Creasy thing I sent you though.
Okay.
That is like
It's an audiobook or a
it's an
podcast?
audiobook. It's his lectures, and he's been
Okay.
lecturing at UCLA for decades, teaching Bible studies. And so, I mean, for a guy like that to like be at a pretty relatively secular school, getting undergraduates, like like teaching undergrads for decades on the
Sure.
Bible, like he just
Sure.
makes it fun, and but it's not entertainment, like it's real. He's like covering this stuff,
Sure.
but it just helps these epics come to life, and like shares details like Solomon, in the Bible, it's like you read about Solomon. David dies. Solomon's now the king of Israel. He marries an Egyptian princess and does a pact with the king of Tyre, and then he moves on. So you kind of get the, but then Bill Creasy's like, oh, what's happening there is like Israel's right between Egypt and then Tyre, which is like the naval power of the time, and so you have all the wheat and all the manufacturing goods that come out of Egypt,
Oh,
and it needs to
cool.
pass through this like what Solomon did was like he created this vertically integrated like economic empire between
Yeah.
having the trade controlled through his partnership, and then he's married the Egyptian princess, so gets the goods.
Oh,
So
that's way
that's why
cooler.
the dude was so wealthy, So
Yeah.
you get two sentences out of the Bible that then like kind of really unpacks more to
Yeah.
the story and more like in that historical real world context that
Sure.
I would just completely miss, to have
Yeah.
read those without having also listening to Bill Creasy in the background. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'll
highly
definitely,
recommend it.
check it out. I think, Nick Diller is, listening to that as well. I just did a
Good.
podcast with him on, last Saturday. I think you guys did a
Yeah.
conversation as well.
Yeah, we
He's a
connected. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's been, kind of a new friend. Like I met him in person here in Austin very briefly, but then I called him up just because he's on the same kind of path
Mhm.
as me with you
Just
know,
pursuing Christianity, stuff like that too. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think he's mentioned he's on his Twitter or X. He's been doing a Bible in a day as well. I
Mhm.
don't know if it's the same thing, but or the same one that you're
Reading
referring
reading
to.
guide, yeah.
Yeah, but but anyways, man, Joe, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to chat with me about Christ and psychedelics and a whole bunch of different things.
My pleasure, Shane. Great to be here, man.
Yeah, man. All right. Peace out.
Be like, "Oh, that to Marty." But